Welcome everyone to the To Be Young, Gifted, and Black session. This will be featuring conversations on supporting Black wellness and with students in academia. I'm Rena Peoples, and I am a Black mental wellness mentee, and who will be supporting this session today. Who we will be having Dr. Zenobia Bryant, Chandler Toppin, and Moiya Toliver. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat.
Thank you. I am so excited and honored to be here. And a special thank you to my panelists. I am going to go ahead and get started. I know we were a little delayed. Let me see. Just a moment. Okay, that's not working. So I'm going to ad lib it because I can't figure out how to, it's not letting me share my screen. So, To Be Young, Gifted, and Black is our session, and it's supporting Black students in academia. I am Dr. Zenobia Bryant. I have a PhD in public health with a concentration in epidemiology. I started Black Health, Black Wealth during 2020, and the vision is optimal wellness and true health equity for Black and Brown women. Um, After getting my degree, I focused mainly my research and work on health equity and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And along with the portion of the business, I have a mentorship program where I mentor young Black and Brown women. Um, so the first activity we were going to do is if you could draw three circles. If you have paper, pen, I know I can't see the participants, but if Moiya and Chandler, you would like to participate, there's three circles. And in each circle, for one circle, you want to label it as um, professional or school. The second circle is personal. And then the third circle is mental or spiritual. And in each circle, you want to list over the past week the tasks or activities you've done that have focused on whatever that circle is labeled, right? So for school, say if it's midterms, you would list how long you studied, what classes you had to study for. For personal, you could list if you meal prep. I did not meal prep in college, but if you meal prep, if you exercise, and and then mental and spiritual is what you did to care for your mental and spiritual health. And so after you've done that, the idea is to um, the idea is for you to see how much time you've spent on each in focusing on each area of your life, right? Um, so this past week, if it's been heavy on, say, school, and you haven't had much time to focus on your mental or spiritual, then it's a visual for you to be intentional next week to add um, more time focusing on your mental or spiritual. If maybe your personal life, uh, you didn't focus much on it this week, then you can add more time there. And it's going to aid in the conversation we're going to have later. But right now, I'm going to pause so that Moiya and Chandler can introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about themselves.
I'll go first. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me today. My name is Chandler Toppin. I am currently a senior pursuing a Bachelor's of Science in Psychology at Spelman College. And a little bit about myself. I'm currently a college ambassador for Black mental wellness because I was presented the opportunity through my school, to one of my professors, to be a mentor. And surprisingly, I didn't get chosen to be a mentee because there wasn't a mentor to align with my field. So I got offered the opportunity by Dr. K-Mac to be a college ambassador. So I currently serve as a college ambassador for Black mental wellness. I'm very passionate about alleviating the issues in the Black community, the mental health issues in the Black community, and the mental health stigma. I currently serve as a mentor for young Black girls in Atlanta through a student organization called Girl Power, where I serve as the publicity chair. So I create content for that organization, and I'm also currently interning with the organization called Theraping for Girls, which is also a nonprofit organization that focuses on mentoring young Black girls in the Atlanta area. Currently
Okay,
interning with the
so good
organization
evening.
called Theraping for
My
Girls,
name is
which is
Moiya.
also a
I currently
nonprofit
attend Howard
organization that focuses
University.
on
I'm in
mentoring
my
young Black
senior year
girls
pursuing a
in the Atlanta
degree
area.
in psychology. My minor is biology, and I am pursuing a career
Currently
okay,
interning with the
so
organization
pertaining to
called
mental
Therapy
health,
for Girls, which is also
with a
a
focus on
nonprofit
the Black and
organization
Brown
that focuses
community.
on mentoring young
And I
Black
would like
girls
to
in the
use
Atlanta area.
my degree to I would like to use my degree to further help Black and Brown individuals who are don't have access to mental health. So theoretically, becoming a psychologist for people in my community that are unrepresented.
Thank you. Um, so, moving on, I would like to ask you both, and anybody that's participating, that's watching, can also put a comment in the chat. I think we can see the chat. What does balance mean to you?
I would like to put in a comment about balance. I believe balance to me means like actively governing the responsibilities that are going on in my life, like at the same like simultaneously. Whereas whether it be work, relationships, my mental health, and when I think of balance, I kind of try to incorporate that into my day to day life and trying to maintain exactly what I have to do, whether that's work during school or work in a professional setting. So it's all about simultaneously balancing all those things at once while also maintaining your health at the same time.
Yes, to go off what Moya said, for me, balance is to pretty much just trying to find a way to prioritize all the things that are important in your life, and not just on a professional or personal level, going back to the original activity, but just on like a mental and spiritual level, on a personal level, just figuring out what those things are, and probably in some ways creating a list or a mental list of what is my top priorities and what is important to me and what are my responsibilities, and just figuring out how I can you know take the time out to give my attention to those areas, and just to benefit myself and to benefit others, and to bring my full self into every space that I enter. I think it's important to have that balance, because in some instances you can tell when you're not your full self, because you haven't been balancing your mental health, and you've been prioritizing your work and prioritizing what you have to do for everybody else, but not exactly what you have to do for yourself. So I think that balance looks a little like that, and having that in order in some cases. Some days or weeks might be bad, just based off the activity. I feel like I haven't really prioritized my mental and spiritual. I had a lot of personal outings. I focused on a lot of school related things, but I haven't really focused on my mental and how I'm feeling and took a second to look back at that. So,
Yes, that's good. And then Kiana Brown said that she views balance as the ability to intentionally manage her time. So my next question I want to pose is, in your opinion, is there a difference between balancing and managing? And if so, what's the difference?
um, I can touch on this. I feel like there's a difference between balancing and managing because I feel as though management is more so to make sure things go smoothly, go in order, but balancing is more so to make sure you're prioritizing everything and giving your time and attention. So, like she said, the ability to intentionally manage my time. So, I think that they go hand in hand in some ways, but I think that managing could also have negative side effects because you could be managing things well, but you're not balancing those other things that are important in your life.
I would also like to. I definitely agree with Chandler. When it comes to managing, uh, and the difference between that and balancing, I feel like managing is more so to survive. Is not prioritizing the things that you're having to deal with throughout life. In a sense, I see it as like just getting by, just doing enough to get by. Whereas, like I said, balancing is actively governing these responsibilities through your day to day life at the same time and being intentional about what it is that you're prioritizing, like Chandler mentioned.
Yes, I agree. So I looked up the definitions, and managing is basically the definition I pulled out was to succeed in surviving or attaining one's aim, especially against heavy odds. Succeed in dealing with or withstanding something, whereas balancing means to keep or put something in a steady position so that it does not fall. And so, like you both raised, balancing is more long term. Managing is just survival, right? So, for me personally, I view now balancing as being able to swim, right? And swim um, maybe an endurance route, right? Be able to be in the water and swim and be able to withstand the waves. That might be coming. Whereas managing, I feel like it's for me is treading water, and I can tell when I'm just managing when I'm like, if another thing happens, I'm going to lose it. That means I've only been managing. I've only been surviving. And so for me, when I was in school, I my background is I went to Emory University, so I spent a lot of time at the AUC Chandler. um, because for one, it's a Emory is a historically white institution, so our black population was small and we ventured out a lot. But I look back and I realized I did not know how to balance time in college. Um, I was a high achieving student, where not that high school was easy, but high school wasn't college, right? So there was a little bit more structure in high school and then college, and I look back and I did not balance. And I talk to my friends now, we're still good friends, and we often reminisce about we were just up late for no reason. We weren't studying, we might have been I'm going to age myself, but at the time N64 was popular. So we were in somebody's room having N64 competitions. But it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Why were we up? um, and I so I left school, and I'm now in the adult world, and I had no skills, no tools to help balance all the competing priorities. And so, and competing priorities are going to look different for everybody, right? It's going to be based on your personality, your responsibilities. For me, I'm very family oriented. I'm almost looked at as the caregiver of my family. So I have certain family responsibilities. Um, Somebody else, they may have children at this point. You have to take care of your children. Um, Aging parents, you may be called in to care for aging parents. It's going to look different for everybody, but typically what you have to balance is school or work, social life, family life, and time for yourself. Time for yourself is very important. That's how a lot of us refuel the mental and spiritual. Um, and that looks different for people, right? Because I'm an introvert, so my refueling is isolation. It's not personal, but I need to be by myself. Somebody else's refueling is, maybe hanging out with friends. Um, and so, if I can get my PowerPoint to move, that brings me also to the discussion on breaking the stigma, right? Because in school, I look back and I realized I was struggling, but I didn't know I was struggling. There was a conversation that we didn't have in my household or surrounding mental health and what it looks like to be struggling or to take care of your mental wellness. And so my first question to you guys is, what are some current challenges you might be facing? And you don't have to share if you're not comfortable, but if you are, I would like to hear. And if not, I'll skip the question and we can go on to the next one.
No, I would like to share because I literally was just dealing with this past week. October has been a really like busy week for me with midterms and everything. So a huge challenge of mine that I've been having to deal with has been like regulating my emotions and finding time to focus on myself because, like I said, I work. I have a job on campus and I work off campus also. So that on top of having to deal with school and then like things outside of my personal life, it's kind of hard for me to focus on my emotions. And so at times it feels like it's all kind of like stuck and I need to release it, but it's like, it's hard not, or either I don't know how. So that's the challenge I'm currently dealing with at the moment.
And I can relate. And you raise a good point that is great to raise in the fact that for especially as Black students, a lot of us do have to work when we go to school. And I remember when I got to Emory and with my more well off counterparts, it was in a sense culture shock because you know I'm just, I don't want to say barely made it, but when it came to finances, I was down at the bursar's office and the financial aid trying to make sure I could register for classes, and other students had their parents in there with the checkbook writing checks for the full year's tuition. And I'm like, I just need to see if I can put $20 down so I can get this class before it fills up, right? Or, they're like, oh, let's go hang out, do whatever. And I'm like, I got to go to work. Y'all ain't working? Like, and learning how to manage that, right? And how to manage that time. So that's a great point you raised. And I want to pin that because I do have some points that I'll come back to on how I've learned to kind of make the time for myself when there are competing priorities. Chandler, you want to say something?
Yeah, I think currently for me, the biggest challenge I'm facing, I think, is just in terms of being a senior in college is sort of like what's next. Um, and what really sort of coming into like my purpose and what I want to do. I think that, like going back to the managing college, when you come into college, they really emphasize the fact of how time management is important, but they don't really tell you how to balance a lot of other things. So I think right now, I have a lot of student organization positions, student leadership positions that I'm trying to juggle while also trying to graduate, while also trying to figure out where I'm going to be next. And I'm constantly getting the question of, oh, what are you about to do when you graduate? What are you going to do? Like, what's next? But I'm still trying to manage my life and balance my life in the now. So it's just like I get into a habit of like trying to avoid the question or trying to, just, not necessarily make up a lie, but try to, say something that will sound good enough in the moment for people to kind of just, give me just like, give me a second is what I really want to say. Just, I'm still figuring it out. But,
Mhm.
like there's a lot of people looking at you in this moment when you're transitioning to the next step of your life. So I think
Mhm.
that that's something I've been challenging with and it's been taking sort of a toll because I haven't had the time to really sit back and actually think about that. So when I get the question, it builds sort of a anxiety because I'm just like, I really don't know at the moment, but I know where I want to go and I know where I see myself, but I just haven't, secured anything or haven't taken those next steps because I'm still trying to, keep my grades good and, show up for my student organizations and show up for everybody else. But, I think that's the biggest challenge I've been facing.
And I want to say thank you to you both for being willing to share. That takes a level of vulnerability and transparency, and I don't take that lightly, um, because that's huge. But I also want to say that it is valid, it's validated. You're not by yourself. I can tell you, I felt the same way, right? And even here in this space that I'm sitting in talking to you, there are still days when I'm like, I don't know, like if y'all would stop asking me, I might be able to figure it out. But right now, I don't know. But and so, I before I give some insight, I wanted to know, what kind of support as students have you felt you needed?
Um, I think the biggest support comes from right now. It's really just who I surround myself with and the
Mm,
spaces that I'm in. Because I 100% know that I'm not the only one. I talk to my friends and I talk to my peers, and it's just like we all do so much, and we all, are going in our own places and are on our own paths. But it's just like some of us are not there yet, and then you get to a point where you're like, you try to start comparing yourself because you see people getting
mm,
job offers and you see people getting accepted into grad school, and then you're just like, you know, of course you want to surround yourself with those type of people, but you also want to receive like sort of like support from them too and help. And I think that's what I've been trying to focus on now is surrounding myself with people who are just genuinely trying to help me and support me in a way that's going to help me grow into my next steps, and not really people who are just like, oh, do this, you need to do this, because I don't want to get into a position where I'm like, I'm surrounding myself with people and they're helping me, but this might not be what I need. This not might be for me. It might be something that will, be good for now, that will help me, but I could be in this job or I could be in this school for years and then I'm not happy. So I just want to make sure that I'm surrounded by people who can be on the same level as transparency as me and talk about what they really need and what they really want, and not just accept things that come,
mhm,
come to them at hand. So.
I would like to definitely agree with Chandler. Like I tell my friends, the people that I'm meeting right now, that I feel like I'm in the point of my life where I'm meeting people that are intentionally like helping me become a better me. And I always, thank them for that and I show my appreciation. But like Chandler said, surrounding myself with, creating that circle of people who are rooting for me just as much as I'm rooting for them. And also, when it comes to support through school, I involve myself with organizations that kind of align with my goals. So, a really huge thing that's been helping me this far is taking advantage of nature. A lot of times, this past summer I worked at a camp. It was a sleepaway camp, and it kind of really helped me immerse myself into nature and taking advantage of what it is that is provided for us, and it's helping me ground myself also. And I readily attend different hikes weekly with a group that was founded at Howard. And so I just make sure I take time to, go out of, my comfort zone and ground myself with like-minded individuals that are, willing to talk it out, discuss those uncomfortable conversations or, whatever it may be at that time.
Yeah, and I just want to comment on that too, because I think I've gotten the most support from being involved in my student organizations, and they've really grounded me because I'm from Philadelphia and I'm president of an organization called AUC Philly Club, where we everybody who's from Philly who attends Clark, Morehouse, and Spelman, we all come together and we have meetings and we have events and we do community service. But just being with them and talking with them is just like I have people I can relate to because you're from where I'm from. You're fighting the same issues that I'm facing. You know, we all have our own personal issues, but we're all in the same boat. And I think that that's the biggest support that I get from those organizations because it's like you're really making friendships and genuine connections, but you're also, you know, doing something important and being student leaders at the same time. Because I think, you know, going to class, you know, you could get support from your professors, but it's more so educational support. It's not really like, unless you're very comfortable with your professors, it's more so just like opportunities and do this and here's this, but it's not really like, you know, transparent talk. So I think being involved, because college is all about what you make it. And I think if you go through college really just trying to, you know, have the highest GPA, when you go into the real world, it's just like you don't really have much to talk about. So I think that's important. So
Thank you guys. I believe more you want to pose a question.
Yes. My question for you would be, you know, throughout your organization, what have been some key points or ways that you help support the young adults in their academic like matriculation or like in whatever endeavors that they're, you know, going through at that moment?
Yeah, so it's very important to me that I one share my story. So I have a blog that needs to be updated because, like Dr. Rita Walker said, I don't keep up with all areas of my life all the time, but I make it a point to share my story. There are some good pieces on the blog, just sharing my story. My Instagram account, I, you know, post for the business. I do monthly affirmations, and there are a lot of times where I choose the affirmation and it's not just out of thin air. It's literally directly related to something I've been going through, and so I share why I chose that affirmation. Um, but on top of that, it's being honest with my story. I started out telling people like, "Hey, I went to Emory," you know. I have been told, you know, I've heard all the I don't like to say micro. I heard all the aggressions. Oh, you're so articulate. Or, you know, I was pre med. So I remember sitting in these organic chemistry physics classes with maybe one or two other people that looked like me. Um, you know, I remember, I believe everything, you know, in our lives has a reason. But, you know, there are definitely moments where I regretted my decision for not looking at HBCUs, being honest, because there is something very powerful about being in a room of like-minded people who look like you. And you know, now I had my reasons for wanting to go the path I wanted to go because I, you know, I'm very strong-headed, and at the time it was like I locked in on something and that was my goal. And I tell my mentees now, please be flexible. Just because you have a plan doesn't mean it has to go that way because there are multiple routes to get to a destination. So for me, I started out pre med. I was going to go to med school. I applied. I did the primary, secondary, MCAT, got waitlisted, got rejected. I tell, you know, then I found public health, or really a family friend came to me and was like, I think, you know, I'm in public health and I think you would be a good fit. You should look into it. And I'm glad I did because I am here because of that. But even that path to finishing, I failed 3 classes in grad school and I was on academic probation. So this is when you know when I talk to my mentees, I tell these real stories of how yeah, I almost didn't make it. But at the end of the day, I still graduated, right? Because I need you to see as a point of reference that the story isn't always linear. So I didn't come out of undergrad and go right into my next phase like I thought I would. And to you, Chandler, I'll say my one regret coming out of college is I did not take my time. I felt the pressure so much of having to have a plan. When the first one didn't go through, I was like, oh, I'm going to do this. And that's how I ended up in DC because I was like, I felt like I needed to do a post back. because I needed to have something to tell people when they say, "What are you doing when you graduate?" And so, Moya, I that's why I am so passionate about my Knowledge is Power community. It's my mentorship program to other Black or Brown women because I know what it feels like to feel lost and trying to find, you know, not just your tribe, but the right people who will, catapult you into your next. And but I know what it also is like to need somebody to be real with you and say, "Hey, I struggle. I still struggle. You know, I have reached a certain level of success, but there's still more, right? It doesn't look like I thought it would look like. And it don't always feel like I thought it would feel like. Um, but it's doable, right? There's gonna be life is gonna throw some things at you. But to see somebody, and I don't take this lightly, and I'm borrowing the words of one of my mentees because I did ask her before I came, what are some things that she feels about our connection? And it's being able to have that person say, "Hey, I see you, but I see more than just you. I see the potential." But that's not what we're gonna focus on. Because when I first started working here, she always talked about her GPA, and I was like, "But that's not your only identity. I know what the numbers say, and I know you want it to be higher, but you're more than that. Because if you really sit down and look at your CV, if you don't ever lead with that, people would never know." And to you guys, like being presidents and leading up these clubs, that's that's the root of what you really are. It's not the numbers, right? Because if you want to get into it, that's kind of rooted in white supremacy anyway. That's not what the conversation is about today. But when you really look at when we start talking about equity and DEI, that it is trying to contain you, but you're more than that. What you have to offer is more than that. And I think it's important, right? So I often tell her, and we unpack whatever it is that, whatever it is that the girls are going through, we unpack that. But then I say, what are two things you're proud of this week? And it could be, oh, I got up and went to class and I didn't feel like it. Celebrate that because it's hard sometimes to get up and go to class when when you have all these other things weighing on you, but you're still showing up. You're still putting forth the effort. You still, and a lot of times, I help because I'm in it now. And my thing is, I don't want you guys to wait till you are in this phase where I am 35 to to finally be feeling a little solid, right? Because I'm learning how to have to celebrate myself. And if you can learn earlier, you can celebrate all these milestones and be present in them. Guys, when I tell you doing my PhD program, I missed so many milestones to celebrate because I was always on to the next thing. So, oh, that got approved, I'm on to the next. Never celebrating the fact that in the midst of it, like at one, I'm here because I failed three classes. So even the fact that I can be even getting a proposal approved is a celebration. No, I was trying to get to the finish line, but there's so many other things to celebrate in that. And I'm very intentional when I try to, and I am intentional too in saying that whatever I tell them to do, I do it myself, right? So when we talk about, mental health comes up, I don't suggest therapists and life coaches just for the fun of it. I suggest it because I'm in it too. I have a therapist, I have a life coach, I have to go unpack my own trauma. Um, but it's essential because that's for me when you talk about self-care and making time for yourself, it's not always fun. I know that the self-care movement is like traveling and bubble bath. It's not always fun for me. Self-care for me is being intentional that when I make an appointment with my therapist, I show up and I'm honest about whatever it is, you know, that's my self-care. If somebody says, "How are you today?" My self-care is being honest and saying, "You know what? I'm not okay, but I don't want to talk about it." Because you can be honest, but not have to share everything, right? So, Chandler, someone says, "What are you doing?" I appreciate the question, but I would rather not discuss that right now. It's learning how to set these boundaries and being okay, right? Uh, My boyfriend came to me with something the other day, and I said, but that's not. He was like, I want to see more of your, when you're creating. I was preparing for this talk. He was like, I want to see more of what you're working on. I had to say, but that's not how my creative process works. It happens in solitude. That's a boundary for me. Not feeling like I need to open myself up to everyone for whoever it is, and saying, no, this is how I create. I can share the finished product. I can give you an alternative, but what you're asking, I can't give. And being okay with that, right? Moiya, you mentioned something earlier about how struggling with trying to make time. Sometimes the time robber is myself, right? So for me, I had to look at my screen report, y'all. I'm just, TikTok and Instagram was taking up my time. So I had to do a hard. I said I gave myself time limits to say, okay, 10 o'clock, my phone goes on the do not disturb. It shuts down all my apps. I gave myself time limits, 4 hours for Instagram, for social media, because that's where I was like, oh, I don't have time to do this. But no, I did. I was just using it for other things, which was an overindulgence of media, right? So now I'm replaying, the videos of people who look like me being berated, right? Um, Another tactic is, a lot of times I feel like we feel like we have to start huge. 5 minutes. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Use that 5 minutes to read if that's what you like to do. Dance, journal. For me, journaling is how I express myself better in writing. So I journal. When I have emotions that I'm struggling with and I don't know, I just do stream of consciousness. If y'all were to read my journal, y'all be like, what is wrong with her? Because it really is stream of consciousness. I could be talking about, oh man, I got dishes in the sink. But then I keep writing and it's like, no, this is what's really bothering me. Um, but it may not be, some people aren't writers. So grounding yourself in nature is another way to kind of express it. The movement, walking, dancing, um, all of that. But it's, for me, when we're talking about how I am intentional about supporting young academics, that's how I'm real with it, you know. And when we meet once a month, and I'm intentionally I do it virtual because I want people to be able to join. So there are people in Georgia, people in Arizona, and it's just a safe space where you can come and unpack and debrief. And we have, conversations. We were recently talking about radical self-love and what we're not apologizing for anymore, because you deserve to take up space with your thoughts, with your ideas, with your feelings. Um, and that's, and I don't come in asking what your plans are. Now, I would love to hear your dreams. I want to know what your dream and vision is. But it's not always about that. I'll ask you, what did you do for fun this week? Oh, you had a birthday. So, one of the girls turned 21. I was like, well, tell me about this 21st birthday trip. I'm here for it, sis. Because I'm interested in what you're doing in the present. The future will come. You'll get there. But when you continuously live in the future, that leads to anxiety. We have to learn to be present in these moments. Chandler, I celebrate. You about to graduate, honey. I think Moiya, you told me you was about to graduate. I'm here for this black girl magic. Listen, I see y'all walking across that stage. Okay. Your next will come. You don't have to rush it. Um, and I think as people, we need to learn how not to rush other people. And I'm thankful for my path because I've learned that. Because had I rushed it, I would be sitting in a completely different field, not, you know, walking in what I know is my purpose. And that's what my wish is for all of the people and the mentees I come in contact with, is to find your purpose and figure out how to walk in it and be okay with the uncomfortable, right? I'm completely uncomfortable on this camera, but you never know until you try, right? What's gonna work or what's not gonna work. So It's okay to try something and say, oh, that didn't fit. Not gonna do that again. Or maybe I need to try it one more time to see how it's gonna work. Um, and I know for me, I had to learn not to fear failure so much because it was in that I saw. I was like, oh, I can take this from that lesson. That whole plan didn't work, but this one thing, if I take it from here, add it over here, we might have something. And I know I've been talking a lot, so I'm gonna let y'all chime back in.
No, I definitely agree with everything you said. That was definitely a lot. I think that you touched a lot of important points, especially, being going to HBCU in general. Like when I first applied to colleges, I didn't apply to a lot of HBCUs at all, and I didn't really know too much about HBCUs because HBCUs were never promoted to us, because of the whole money situation, but that's a different conversation. But I never really knew too much about Spelman College or what HBCUs had to offer, and I was in between Spelman and another PWI, which was a much better school in terms of like, white supremacist characteristics. But I feel as though like when I visited both schools, I didn't feel the same type of energy and the same type of connection and the same type of pull to go there. It just was more so like I could go here and then it would look good on my degree, but I have to live here for 4 years. Like, is how's it going to be on me mentally and spiritually? And it's more than just, education and numbers, I think. When comes into where you're going to spend 4 years or where you're going to go next, I think you have to look at um, all those details. So when I went to Spelman College, I felt as though it was the best choice that I've made so far. Like just being around that caliber of women and being around, sort of like a hub of Black success and Black people all doing good things. I think HBCUs are important and it's something that I promote. But I think that, people say HBCUs don't, prepare you for the real world, which is being in spaces with predominantly white people. And I think that that's pretty much a false statement because I think that my HBCU prepared me the best, to go into those spaces and talk to those people because, we went in learning about African diaspora and learning about where we came from and learning about, our different intersectionalities of who we are. And I think that being in this space, if I went to a PWI, I wouldn't
Mhm.
really know what to do in the real world. I would really be stuck. But I think, you know, every school has the room to grow in terms of supporting students for the next steps and what's next. Because I think we are stuck on those elitist job positions of doctor and lawyer and being in these very much attainable spaces, but that might not be the space for everybody. And I think that HBCUs and colleges in general should work on building more spaces for a lot of different opportunities and having conversations. When I went, I was a biology major and I didn't know what I was doing and I was struggling. And then I had met a peer who was a psychology major and she was like, why are you a biology major when you can learn some of the same things and take some of the same classes with doing an easier major that's less stress on you? And I immediately switched my major and I never like, like it was the best decision I made because I was struggling trying to but I became a biology major because I was listening to, the people outside of me of why
Mhm.
it's better on your degree and it'll help you get into medical school and but that necessarily wasn't for me. So I think being a psychology
Mhm.
major and being passionate about mental health, I think that I'm glad that I'm in the space that I'm in. I'm glad that I have the people that I have around me. But I think that I just, still have to figure out what's next for me and what I really wanted to do and what's going to work for me. And I'm okay with being transparent about telling people I don't know what I want to do. But I think the hardest the hardest people to be transparent with for me is more so my parents and the people that are helping me and supporting me to get through school and paying for most of, my school. So I think that that's just like, I don't want to disappoint. I don't want to fail. I don't want to, take longer than I have to make them happy. But, it's more so just like I have to go my own path, my own route, and realize that I don't want to do something that I'm going to be unhappy doing, trying to make somebody else happy, because it's at the end of the day, it's my life. And I think that's when you have that shift into adulthood and, leaving your parents' house when you first go to college. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, you tell them you're going to do all these amazing things in college, and you do those amazing things, but then it's just like, now what's the next amazing thing? And they're looking for the next thing. So I think that's the
Mm-hmm.
biggest pressure that I have on me right now, not necessarily from like peers or school, but my parents want to know what's next.
Mm-hmm.
My grandparents want to know what's next. And I think that goes into breaking the stigma of like, not being as successful as Black households make you think you have to be, or being in these positions of
Mm-hmm.
doctors and lawyers. Like, that's not the only career where you can be successful in, but they don't know too much about that because it's just a traditional stigma of being, in these elitist supremacist views, and this is how you're going to survive if you're a doctor, and being, like, but I can be a
Mm-hmm.
doctor, but I don't have to, be in the hospital to be a doctor. So I think that that's the disconnect of, I can be so much more, and in so many opportunities, but I think they're just looking at, you know, what what success looks like in a white
Mm-hmm.
person's view. So I think that that's important.
No, that you I commend you because for one, you already know how to listen to your gut, right? Because even when you chose a college, you went with what felt right and not what other people said. And the more you do that, the more you get used to listening to your intuition. Because it's like I always say, like when you're learning to set boundaries, when you're learning to, listen to your intuition, when you're learning to take care of yourself, the more you do it, the easier it gets because it's a muscle. And the more you work out that muscle, the stronger it gets. Um, but also knowing that when we are bringing these changes, right, the next generation, as you know, we are tearing down these foundations and rebuilding some things, right? Understanding that yes, your parents are doing the best they can for with what they know, but this is your life. And I'm gonna tell you that my parents are my biggest supporters. But when I started out, they were like, "Girl, what are you doing?" But then they saw me and they were like, "This is where you're supposed to be. We wanted you to go to med school, but this is where you're supposed to be." And so even now, when I go to bed early, I'm the only one in my family. I'm not staying up late all night working. I'm not doing none of that. And they tease me, but then they'll be like, "You're gonna get your rest, and we need to be doing the same." Yes, you do. Yes, because rest is our birthright, and I'm making the ancestors proud when I choose to rest. But it's you know understanding that when you're walking this, there's some things that when it don't fit, you gotta throw it away. And people and those closest to you oftentimes won't understand, right? And so I don't negate this pressure because I know what that pressure feels like to be the next generation and say I got to make for us when we go when we enter the next realm. We don't just we're not individuals. We bring it's we're doing it for our parents and our grandparents and understanding what you know we're their wildest dreams, but also it sometimes we got to take that pressure off ourselves. It's like, okay, but this is I'm walking this path. And when I choose the path that's right for me and I'm happy, they'll be happy. They'll be okay because it's going to fit. All the puzzles are going to fit. A lot of times we try to force things to fit. And that's where we struggle because now we're unhappy. We don't have, we're like, this don't feel like I thought it was because it's not fitting. And then we're trying to listen to all the other voices, but our intuition is saying, sis, this ain't it. Get me out. Um, and so now I'm learning that. But baby, if I had known how to do that when I was in your shoes, oh my God. And I commend y'all. Like I look at this next generation and I I'm encouraged. I have hope because you guys are doing it. And I know we are almost at time, so I want to be mindful. But if you guys have any last minute comments, I don't know if this thing has cut us off or not on the stage. But Are any questions in the chat?
Before we leave, I would just like to add on to the fact that I agree wholeheartedly with what both of you guys were saying about, like, choosing the HBCU that's for you and not listen to worldly things that that persuade you to choose your life path. And one of the biggest things that I feel like has limited me and my success is like letting the failures and successes define who I am. And instead I kind of take it as it comes and allow myself a little grace. I kind of have a hard time when it, like I said, like failures, if it's something that that goes wrong or doesn't go my way, I kind of like get in the headspace as if that's it or that's the end of the world. But I've learned to, and I'm still learning, it's kind of a practice that I'm doing, is giving myself grace and letting myself know, like, these successes and these failures do not define me. How who I am as a person and the impact I leave on others is what defines me. And I'd rather have that define, let that define me than, the failures and successes.
Yeah, I think that's important because I think the pressure is so high when you get those no's and you don't get accepted into those programs or those opportunities. It's just like the end of the world, because it's just like now you're questioning yourself, and you're questioning yourself on a higher level of just who you are as a person. But I think that, you know, one no is another yes to me. I think that, you know, in a way, the universe tells us no for certain things because it's probably not meant for us, but we think it's meant for us because we see somebody else doing it, or, you know, but I don't think those no's are anything that should be taken so harshly, or anything that we should judge ourselves for, because, you know, it might not just be meant for us even just right now. It might be something that is meant to be done in the future or in the next step. So I think that that's also something that was just a struggle for me in college, you know, not getting into certain programs or not getting accepted into certain things. It was just like, well, I don't know what else to do, or like, why am I being told no? Like, what's wrong with me? But I think that, you know, those no's were important for me because they were lessons and they helped me, you know, celebrate my yeses on a higher level, and, you know, make me realize that these are spaces that I'm more happier that I'm in versus the spaces that I thought I wanted to be in. So yeah.
With that, I will let that be those be our closing statements because I have nothing else to say but yes and amen. So, um, if you guys, my contact information is located in the resource guide that was sent out. My website is Black Health Black Wealth. You can find me there. Um, and thank you guys for joining, and thank you, Moiya and Chandler. It has been great. It's been an honor. I applaud you in the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me and listening to
Thank
me today.
you. Thank you.